Marcellin Jeannot Monette was not a happy man. Fortunately, Marcellin did not measure his happiness by a bank's or any other account, only his own account of his own life, which paid a most interesting dividend, a life worth his, and our, interest. Marcellin Jeannot Monette was born at 3:30 a.m. on July 23 of 1916 in Paris. His mother, Marcy, was, for a while, a prostitute, before she met Klaus, a German who had once been a landowner in Bavaria before being evicted for camel smuggling via a bizarre trade route that remains secret to this day. Humiliated and all but banished from Bavaria, Klaus fled to Paris, where he met Marcy. Marcellin was raised to the sound of Klaus moaning, "Nay, but 'tis true." These words had a pronounced effect on Marcellin Jeannot Monette throughout his life. In fact, some go so far as to claim that Marcellin's mysterious disappearance from the history of existentialism was not unlike that of the camels once to have traveled a secret path to Bavaria, only to vanish. Just as Marcellin himself simply disappeared one day. And yet his wisdom remains in the books he left in his untraceable wake. Chief among his published works, no longer in print, are the titles, Something Less Than Being, Nothing More But Also Less, and his last book, Neither Here Nor There. Beaten regularly by his father, at chess, Marcellin was prone to submissiveness. He endured verbal whippings with a certain aplomb, best stated by the title of his first book, I Appreciate That. In just that way he fell under the sway of Sartre, whom Marcellin first met in Paris in 1940. He absorbed the master's teachings until he could absorb no more. The last words Sartre spoke to Marcellin were, "You broke my glasses." Marcellin was nonplussed by what he considered Sartre's bad faith, proven to him, as Marcellin put it, by the fact of Sartre's having faith in himself. Soon, Marcellin began writing his own complex, some say unreadable, tracts, which he called In Existentialism, although he always insisted that In Existentialism was one and the same as existentialism, only different. The following is from a recently found lost recording in which Marcellin reads much of his own work and to which we shall return again and again.
Let's understand au disciple du bête le worot. Yes. Dissement. Dissement and d'odeur prostitute, etc. With replacement et de, Tobout, Endelway, Europea, Maya. Where. Replacement et de, prostitute. Maya.
With that Marcellin left Sartre behind forever. His In Existentialism gained a small following, for Marcellin had a strange fascination with short men, over whom, many of those men later said, Marcellin at last loomed over someone. Indeed, he entitled his unpublished memoirs, Looming Over Someone. Looming was to become an obsession with Marcellin, who made frequent trips to Switzerland so that he might contemplate climbing mountains. While he never actually climbed a mountain, his contemplation of doing so eventually and certainly almost proved to be the presumed cause of his disappearance and death. Yet this obsession also proved to be the source of much beauty for Marcellin, for in addition to his philosophical work, he began to write poetry, much of it related to mountains, as in this poem, In Relation to Mountains.
Mountain, oh mountain. Oh we not climb te so that he may reach your pea at your feet, which stink of dirt and the dirting, like fungi. Yea, you see, to you be blind ta about it e a cavedin, a ma canary in your colmine. Oh we wish to stroke your bear, so very, mountain one, so very wizendery.
Becoming more and more immersed in his poetry, Marcellin began to leave philosophy behind, so much so that he began to call himself an existentialist. Nevertheless, he continued to write philosophy to make ends meet, and in those ends met his first and only love, Henrietta Bad-Omen Singh. In this, her only recorded interview, Henrietta described her relationship with Marcellin.
The thing about Marcy, I called him, his stash was full of, how do you say, Marcy was full of machismo. Like just about everybody, he took advantage of his submissive seed and blickled him. But every now and then, a cheval explode and began screaming, né, but, titru. Né, but, titru. Né, but, titru. Né, but, titru.
Henrietta and Marcy made a fiery couple and were prone to fistfights in which the only one struck was Marcy. He reflected on this fact in his, again, unpublished memoirs. Fortunately, he recorded his thoughts.
Ne, but titrou. She dit strike me and struck me often. I was struck by my inability to strike, per I wanted to strike so hard that I struck myself. Yes, that's precisely the fact. I was striking myself. Y, titrou.
Something else is striking about Marcy, as he began to call himself soon after meeting Henrietta. That striking fact is that with one exception, Marcy seemed to have never noticed World War II in any way whatsoever, not until, that is, one not so fine day, when in the midst of the Nazi occupation of France, he assumed and never again freed himself from the persona of a German woman.
I didn't see anything strong in it. I found myself attracted to myself, but only at the box and fishnet stockings. I had always been drawn to the forbidden. And now I had forbidden myself. I never took Henrietta again. But even took a woman named Matilda. Dorthin was that when she took her clothes off, she looked exactly like me. I was finally existing.
Unfortunately, that was not to be the case, for Marcy Land. Then Marcy and finally Matilda began, it seems, to come apart at the seams. Breaking up with himself and herself, Marcy and Matilda split the difference between their personalities and fled one another only to find one another, each inhabiting the same skin, though whether the skin was his, hers or both, no one will ever know. He and or she and or both were last seen in Switzerland, at the foot of a mountain no one ever bothered naming. Here, 1, 2, 3, or more or less or none of the above recorded his, her or their final words.
I love you.
I love you not.
I love you.
I love you not.
I love you. I love you. I love you.
I love you not.
I love you not. I love you.
I love you.
I love you not.
His or her body or bodies were never found, but this much remains, not much. In disappearing from the world and his own philosophy, Marcellin Jeannot Monette guaranteed his place in history, that being a place that does not exist.